From the shifting sands of Kitty Hawk to the absolute bleeding edge of stealth technology, this is the hardware that took mankind from the ground to the stars. We aren't just talking about machines here. We are talking about the aluminum, steel, and composite spine of American air superiority. We're kicking this flight plan off with the fighters and interceptors, the tip of the spear, the Wright Flyer, the Model 1. This is where it all started. It was barely more than wood, fabric, and a prayer, but it proved that gravity was just a suggestion. The P-26 pea shooter. It looks like a toy now, but this open cockpit monoplane was the bridge between the biplane era and the warbirds that would save the world. The P-51 Mustang, the Cadillac of the skies. When the bombers needed an escort all the way to Berlin and back, this Packard Merlin-powered beast was the answer. It is arguably the most beautiful piston fighter ever built. The P-47 Thunderbolt, the Jug. While the Mustang was pretty, the Jug was a flying tank. You could fly this thing through a brick wall, and it would still bring you home. 8.50 cals meant anything in front of it simply ceased to exist. The P-38 Lightning, the fork-tailed devil, twin booms, twin engines, and a nose packed with guns. It dominated the Pacific theater and gave Richard Bong his ace of aces status. The F-4U Corsair, the whistling death. With those gull wings and that massive radial engine, it was the terror of the Japanese infantry. A carrier-based brawler that could dogfight or drop napalm with equal hate. The F-6F Hellcat, the ace maker. It wasn't flashy, but it was built like an anvil and killed more Zeros than any other Allied aircraft. The F-8F Bearcat, the ultimate piston engine climber. It was basically the biggest engine they could find bolted to the smallest airframe possible. A hot rod in the truest sense. Then came the jet age, the P-80 Shooting Star, America's first operational jet fighter. It taught us that propellers were a thing of the past. The F-86 Sabre, the MiG killer. In the skies over Korea, this swept-wing legend went toe-to-toe with the MiG-15 and proved that American pilots were a cut above. The F-100 Super Sabre, the Hunch, the first operational fighter to crack the sound barrier in level flight. It was loud, fast, and dangerous, sometimes to its own pilot. The F-104 Starfighter, the missile with a man in it. Tiny wings, massive engine, and Mach 2 speed. It didn't turn well, but it could catch anything on the planet. The F-4 Phantom II, the double ugly. Proof that if you put enough thrust behind a brick, it will fly. It was a smoky, loud, two-seat beast that served the Navy, Marines, and Air Force with distinction in Vietnam. The F-105 Thunderchief, the Thud. Built to deliver nukes, it ended up being the workhorse of the bombing campaign in North Vietnam, taking massive punishment at treetop level. The F-8 Crusader, the last of the gunfighters. While everyone else was relying on missiles, the Crusader pilots knew that 20mm cannons were the only reliable way to clear the sky. The F-14 Tomcat, the Fleet Defender, swing wings, Phoenix missiles, and pure attitude. For decades, if you saw a Tomcat, you knew the U.S. Navy owned that airspace. The F-15 Eagle, undefeated. Literally, it has never lost a dogfight. It is the gold standard of air superiority. Designed with one purpose: hunt down other planes and kill them. The F-16 Fighting Falcon, the Viper. Small, agile, and pulling 9 Gs. It turned the pilot into a system manager and revolutionized dogfighting with fly-by-wire capability. The F-A-18 Hornet and Super Hornet, the Swiss Army knife of the fleet. It does everything: air-to-air, air-to-ground, suppression, and does it off a pitching carrier deck at night. The F-22 Raptor, the Apex Predator. It's stealthy, it super cruises without afterburner, and it sees you before you even know you're in the fight. It is unfair, and that's exactly how we like it. The F-35 Lightning II, the flying supercomputer. It connects the entire battlefield, sharing data and dropping ordnance with surgical precision. They're switching gears to the heavy hitters. Bomber, the B-17 Flying Fortress, the symbol of the daylight bombing campaign. It could take an absolute beating, flak fighters mid-air collisions, and still limp home on one engine. The B-24 Liberator, the ugly sister to the B-17, but it flew further and carried more bombs. The Ploesti raids proved this thing had guts. The B-29 Super Fortress, pressurized, high-tech, and the delivery system for the atomic age. It ended World War II. The B-36 Peacemaker, 6 turn-in, 4 burn-in, a massive mix of props and jets. It was designed to bomb Europe from America without landing. The B-47 Stratojet, the first swept-wing jet bomber. It set the design template template for every airliner you fly on today. The B-52 Stratofortress, the buff, big, ugly, fat fellow. It has served for over 70 years. It bombed Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. It will probably be flown by the great-grandchildren of the original pilots. The B-58 Hustler, a MAS-2 nuclear bomber that looked like a spaceship. It was fast, sexy, and incredibly difficult to fly. The F-111 Aardvark, the Vark, a swing-wing tactical bomber that lived in the dirt, flying fast and low to deliver precision strikes in the dark. The B-1B Lancer, the Bone, a supersonic heavy bomber with sleek lines and a massive payload capacity. When you need to level a grid square in a hurry, you call the Bone. The B-2 Spirit, the stealth bomber, a flying wing that disappears from radar. It can fly across the globe, kick down the door, and leave before the enemy knows the war started. Now for the mud movers, attack and close air support. The A-1 Sky Raider, the SPAD, a prop plane in a jet war. It carried more ordnance than a B-17 and could loiter over the jungle for hours, saving countless lives on the ground. The A-4 Skyhawk, Heinemann's hot rod, small, nimble, and tough, a favorite of the Navy and Marines for delivering hate on a budget. The A-6 Intruder, the all-weather workhorse. Rain, snow, or pitch black night, the Intruder put the bomb on the target. The A-7 Corsair II, the SLUF, short, little, ugly fellow. It brought digital avionics to the attack game and paved the way for modern precision bombing. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, the Warthog. It's a 30mm GAU-8 Avenger cannon with a plane wrapped around it. The sound of that gun, Bert, is the sound of freedom for infantry and a death sentence for tanks. The AC-130 Spectre/Spooky, the Angel of Death, a cargo plane loaded with howitzers and Gatling guns, circling overhead and raining lead in a precise cone of fire. Let's talk logistics, transports, and tankers. The C-47 Skytrain, the Goonie Bird. It dropped paratroopers into Normandy and flew the hump in the Himalayas. General Eisenhower called it one of the most vital weapons of World War II. The C-54 Skymaster, the hero of the Berlin airlift. It kept a city alive when the Iron Curtain came down. The C-130 Hercules, the legend. It lands on dirt, snow, and aircraft carriers. It's been in production longer than anything else because you cannot improve on perfection. The C-141 Starlifter, the first pure jet strategic lifter. It brought the troops to Desert Storm and brought the wounded home. The C-5 Galaxy, the aluminum cloud. When you need to move a tank, a helicopter, or an entire base across the ocean, you open the nose of a C-5. Or the C-17 Globemaster III, the modern heavyweight. It has the hauling capacity of the C-5, but can land on the short, rough airstrips of the C-130, the KC-135 Stratotanker, the flying gas station. Without this, the fighters and bombers don't get to the fight. It's the unsung hero of global reach, moving to the eyes in the sky. Reconnaissance. The P-38 Lightning F-5 variant. Before satellites, we had fast props with cameras. The U-2 Dragon Lady, flying at the edge of space. It's harder to fly than almost anything else in the inventory, requiring a chase car just to help it land. The SR-71 Blackbird, the King, titanium skin, leaking fuel on the tarmac, and flying Mach 3+. It holds records that will likely never be broken by an air-breathing manned aircraft. When a missile was fired at it, the pilot just pushed the throttle forward and outran the missile. The E-3 Sentry, the AWACS, the giant radar dish on top, sees everything. It manages the air war, telling the fighters where to go to kill the bad guys. The RQ-4 Global Hawk, the Endurance Champion, a pilotless drone that can stare at a target for over 30 hours without blinking. We can't forget the helicopters, the sound of salvation. The R-4, the first mass-produced helicopter. It was barely functional by modern standards, but it proved the concept. The Bell 47, the MASH helicopter. That bubble canopy is iconic. It introduced the world to medevac. The UH-1 Iroquois, the Huey, the soundtrack of Vietnam. The whoop 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 of those blades meant ammo, food, or a ride home. The AH-1 Cobra, the Snake, America's first dedicated attack helicopter, slim, mean, and packed with rockets. The CH-47 Chinook, the dual-rotor workhorse. It hauls artillery, vehicles, and troops. It's fast, it's loud, and it lifts heavy. The CH-53 Sea Stallion, the heavy lifter for the Marines. If it's too heavy for a Chinook, the 53 grabs it. The OH-58 Kiowa, the the Scout, flying at treetop level, finding targets for the big guns. The pilots who flew these had nerves of steel. The AH-64 Apache, the flying tank, radar-guided Hellfire missiles, and a chain gun linked to the pilot's helmet. If he looks at you, you die. The UH-60 Blackhawk, the modern utility legend, fast, crash-worthy, and versatile. It replaced the Huey and became the face of modern air assault. The V-22 Osprey, the Transformer, takes off like a helicopter, flies like a plane. It changed the range and speed game for the Marines and Special Ops. Let's hit the civil and general aviation, the roots of American flight. The Piper J 3 Cub, yellow, slow, and perfect. It taught more people to fly than perhaps any other plane. The Cessna 172, the most produced aircraft in history, reliable, forgiving, and everywhere. If you have a pilot's license, you've probably flown one. The Beechcraft Bonanza, the fork-tailed Doctor Killer, fast, complex, and high performance, a status symbol for the private pilot. The Douglas DC-3, the plane that made airline travel profitable, rugged and reliable. Some are still flying cargo in the bush today. The Boeing 314 Clipper, the flying boat. Before runways were everywhere, these luxury liners crossed the oceans, landing in harbors. The Boeing 707, the jet that shrank the world. It ushered in the modern era of international travel. The Boeing 747, or the Queen of the Skies. That hump is unmistakable. It democratized air travel and became the Air Force One for the presidents. The Learjet 23, the start of business aviation. It was basically a fighter jet with leather seats. The Gulfstream series, the gold standard for corporate travel, flying high and fast in absolute luxury. And finally, the experimental and X-planes, the ones that pushed the envelope until it tore. The Bell X-1, glamorous Glennis. Chuck Yeager strapped in, broke his ribs, and then broke the sound barrier. The X-15, the rocket plane, dropped from a B-52. It flew to the edge of space at Mach 6.7. The pilots earned astronaut wings. The X-3 Stiletto. It looked fast, even standing still. A long, needle-nosed dart designed to test supersonic heating. The X-29, forward-swept wings. It looked wrong, but it proved that computers could make an unstable plane fly like a dream. The X-37, the spaceplane. It goes up on a rocket, stays in orbit for months, doing classified things, and lands like a plane. From the wood and wire of the Wright brothers to the radar-absorbing skin of the B-21 Raider, this is the lineage of American aerospace. It's a history written in jet fuel, contrails, and the roar of afterburners. This is the hardware that guarantees when the U.S. arrives, we own the sky.